Management accounting is a field of accounting that focuses on providing information and analysis to managers to assist them in planning, evaluating, and controlling activities within an organization to achieve its objectives. It involves the use of financial and non-financial data to support decision-making and help improve the future performance of the organization. By providing managers with relevant information, management accounting helps them make informed decisions about resource allocation, cost control, pricing, budgeting, and performance measurement. On the other hand, financial accounting primarily deals with the reporting and communication of an organization's financial information to external stakeholders such as shareholders, investors, and regulatory authorities. Shakespeare scholars from almost 50 countries will gather at King's College London next week as the university co-hosts the 10th World Shakespeare Congress to explore and honor the bard's life and work. Organized by the International Shakespeare Association, ISA, the World Congress is held every 5 years, and 2016 is the first time it will be co-hosted in 2 locations that were integral to both the personal and working life of William Shakespeare. Delegates will arrive in London on Thursday following the start of the Congress on Sunday in Stratford-upon-Avon. With the main theme of creating and recreating Shakespeare, the Congress will look at the continuing global relevance of Shakespeare's work through a varied program of plenaries, panels, seminars, and workshops. As war spreads to many corners of the globe, children sadly have been drawn into the center of conflicts. In Afghanistan, Bosnia, and Colombia, however, groups of children have been taking part in peace education projects. The children, after learning to resolve conflicts, took on the role of peacemakers. The Children's Movement for Peace in Colombia was even nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize in 1998. Groups of children acting as peacemakers studied human rights and poverty issues. Assuming images role projects comprehensive acting. There is an academic consensus that gunpowder was initially invented in China as early as the 9th century. This led to its use in fireworks and in gunpowder weapons. Many people like to learn a new language. Exciting as it sounds, to achieve the proficiency it can take a lot of efforts. There are multiple stages before a person can be said to be a language expert. First of all, the person should set a few short-term goals and narrow the focus on the most basic part. Every language uses grammar, which creates its skeleton. If a person learns the grammar, it's half job done. After that, learning to use the right words is very important, because a word can be used in a variety of connotations at different places. Having a pal or a friend who speaks that language makes the task easier, so that errors could be rectified instantly. When you understand at least 40% of the words and sentences, listening to the programs and news in that language can also help immensely. Almost no one regards corn with suspicion. But the same can't be said for humans' ingenious ability to engineer the plants we eat. Genetically modified, GM, crops are viewed with such hostility that they are barely grown in Europe. However, a new study by an independent group of scientists, who have done the most comprehensive review of the evidence so far, shows that our aversion to GM food is pointless, unscientific, and harmful to farmers. Research is a process of investigation leading to new insights effectively shared and is central to the purpose of any university. Students have the right to be taught by acknowledged experts in their field, which requires that staff members operate at the most advanced level appropriate to their discipline and level. Research is, therefore, crucial to a positive student experience from further education to doctoral development. Studies of pine martens in Scotland have shown that the diet varies seasonally, with small mammals, berries, and small birds being the main foods. Recent work on a plantation has shown that martens establish their home ranges in areas dominated by forests and dense shrubs. Within home ranges, martens utilize areas of grassy vegetation within the forest which are typically associated with microdus voles, for which a strong selective preference over other small mammals is shown. It sounds like something out of a science fiction movie, or nightmare, millions of honeybees suddenly dying off, their bodies never found. Scientists have named the phenomenon colony collapse disorder, but they aren't united on the reason. A surprising number of writers, even those who have thought of their writing as self-expression, have sought a freedom from the tyranny of subjectivity, echoing Goethe's claim that every healthy effort is directed from the inward to the outward world. From time to time, others have risen to defend commitment, engagement, involvement. But, at least until recently, the predominant demand in this century has been for some sort of objectivity. As research has shown, emotions are contagious. And empaths are especially sensitive to others' emotional energies. Because they're so attuned to others, they can get easily exhausted in crowds, be drawn into codependent relationships, exhaust themselves trying to solve others' problems, or burn out from too much caregiving. Many utopias have been dreamed up through the ages. From Plato's Republic to Thomas More's Utopia and beyond, serious thinkers have envisioned societies where people live in peace and harmony. Most of these imaginary worlds have things in common. Everybody is equal and plays a part in the running of the society. Nobody goes without the essentials of life. People live mostly off the land. Often there is no money, and so on. Another thing they have in common is that, to the average person, they appear distasteful or unworkable since they do not take into account ordinary human nature or feelings. Architects have got in on the act, too. After the Great Fire of London, Christopher Wren drew up plans for a reconstruction of the whole city.
And in the 20th century there was Le Corbusier's radiant city in which, if you weren't in a car, or didn't have one, life would have been a nightmare. Also in the 20th century, another famous architect, Frank Lloyd Wright, dreamed up a perfect city that got no further than the drawing board. Wright believed that what was wrong with modern cities was, in his words, rent. Ideas, land, even money itself, had to be paid for. He saw this as a form of slavery and believed that modern city dwellers had no sense of themselves as productive individuals. Thus, Wright's city was to be made up of numerous individual homesteads, and the houses themselves were to be simple, functional, and in harmony with the environment. Everyone would own enough land to grow food for himself and his family. Marriage is a big step in anyone's life, and there is an argument to be made against getting married too early. As any newlywed couple knows, there is a huge amount of financial pressure associated with marriage. Firstly, the wedding reception and honeymoon cost you an arm and a leg. Then there's the matter of home loans, rent and energy bills. If you're looking to start a family, your child's education is another thing you need to save up for. Teenagers should probably find a proper job before deciding to tie the knot. A letter from a mother to school officials. Because her son was sick at home, and she explained his illness to them, saying she did not want his son to spread the disease to other children. She hoped that the authorities would be able to pass on lessons to his son during this period. A flower's color, however, isn't a foolproof guide to a good lunch. That's because the color can change depending on the angle at which sunlight hits its petals. A yellow flower, for example, may look somewhat blue from one angle and red from another. Scientists call this kind of color change iridescence. It's the same phenomenon that makes a rainbow appear in a soap bubble or on a CD, says Beverly Glover. She studies plants at the University of Cambridge in England. In 2009, Glover and her colleagues showed that even when petals look shimmery, bees can still tell which flowers likely hold food. But she and others noticed something odd about iridescence. It's not quite as flashy in plants as in other life forms, Glover says. The backs of jewel beetles or the wings of certain butterflies, for instance, shine and shimmer a lot more. Scientists around the world are racing to learn how to rapidly diagnose, treat, and stop the spread of a new, deadly disease. SARS, severe acute respiratory syndrome, was detected for the first time in February 2003 in Hanoi, and since then has infected more than 1,600 people in 15 countries, killing 63. At this point, there are more questions than answers surrounding the disease. Symptoms start with a fever over 104 degrees Fahrenheit, chills, headache or body aches. Within a week, the patient has a dry cough, which might progress to shortness of breath. In 10% to 20% of cases, patients require mechanical ventilation to breathe. About 3.5% die from the disease.
Height is correlated with a lot of things. Up to a certain height, taller people make more money than the flatly challenged. And the taller residential candidate almost always wins. Now a study finds that your height as an adult has a profound effect on your perception of your health. Short people judge their health to be worse than average, or tall people judge theirs. The research was published in the journal Clinical Endocrinology. Data for the study came from the 2003 Health Survey for England. More than 14,000 participants filled out questions and had their heights measured. The study only looked at how good the subject thought his or her health was, not their actual health.
Questions focused on 5 areas: mobility, self-care, normal activities, pain or disgrace, and anxiety or depression. Men shorter than about 5 feet 4 and women shorter than 5 feet reported the worst impressions. But small increases in height at the low end had much bigger effect on perception than the same increase among taller people. Other studies have shown, ironically, that shorter people on average actually live longer. A postal article, not the postal article. Now, before we get ahead of ourselves, an article in English is a verb that precedes a noun, and simply indicates specificity. This sounds quite complicated, and to be honest, it's quite complicated to say without spraying everyone within 15 feet, but the concept's quite simple.
As soon as you walk through the doors of the event, you will be greeted with numerous engaging activities and displays. Some of the highlights include interactive exhibits demonstrating how a human heart works, sections showcasing the spinal cord and brain, and displays featuring butterflies and various insects. Visitors will even have the opportunity to try catching local insects. Additionally, there will be activities such as walking through local plant gardens to observe and understand the process of photosynthesis. The organizers of Bio Bonanza have ensured that the event caters to a diverse audience. While the displays are designed to engage high school and middle school students, there will be activities suitable for individuals of all ages. As soon as you walk through the doors of the event, you will be greeted with numerous engaging activities and displays. Some of the highlights include interactive exhibits demonstrating how a human heart works, sections showcasing the spinal cord and brain, and displays featuring butterflies and various insects. Visitors will even have the opportunity to try catching local insects. Additionally, there will be activities such as walking through local plant gardens to observe and understand the process of photosynthesis. The organizers of Bio Bonanza have ensured that the event caters to a diverse audience. While the displays are designed to engage high school and middle school students, there will be activities suitable for individuals of all ages. The development of methods of learning in humans is a complex topic that involves various social and cognitive processes. Laland's work primarily focuses on areas such as social learning, cultural evolution, and niche construction. According to Laland and the emerging consensus among researchers in the field, the key to humanity's unique capacity for acquiring knowledge and skills lies in our ability to learn from other individuals within our social communities. Humans build upon a reservoir of shared knowledge through iterative processes, enabling the creation of increasingly efficient and diverse solutions to life's challenges. This process of communal knowledge acquisition and accumulation is a fundamental aspect of human culture, and it sets us apart from other animals.
Why and to what extent should parents control their children's TV watching? There is certainly nothing inherently wrong with TV. The problem is how much television a child watches and what effect it has on his life. Research has shown that as the amount of time spent watching TV goes up, the amount of time devoted not only to homework and study but other important aspects of life such as social development and physical activities decreases. Television is bound to have a tremendous impact on a child, both in terms of how many hours a week he watches TV and of what he sees. When a parent is concerned about the effects of television, he should consider a number of things: what TV offers the child in terms of information and knowledge, how many hours a week a youngster his age should watch television. Armed police have been brought into NSW schools to reduce crime rates and educate students. The 40 School Liaison Police (SLP) officers have been allocated to public and private high schools across the state. Organizers say the officers, who began work last week, will build positive relationships between police and students. But parent groups warned of potential dangers of armed police working at schools in communities where police relations were already under strain. Among their duties, the SLPs will conduct crime prevention workshops, talking to students about issues including shoplifting, offensive behavior, graffiti and drugs and alcohol. They can also advise school principals. One SLP, Constable Ben Purvis, began work in the inner Sydney region last week, including at Alexandria Park Community School's senior campus. The coevolutionary relationship between cows and grass is one of nature's underappreciated wonders. It also happens to be the key to understanding just about everything about modern meat. For the grasses, which have evolved to withstand the grazing of ruminants, the cow maintains and expands their habitat by preventing trees and shrubs from gaining a foothold and hogging the sunlight. The animal also spreads grass seed, plants it with his hooves, and then fertilizes it with his manure. In exchange for these services, the grasses offer ruminants a plentiful and exclusive supply of lunch. For cows have evolved the special ability to convert grass which single-stomached creatures. They can do this because they possess what is surely the most highly evolved digestive organ in nature, the rumen. Parents' own birth order can become an issue when dynamics in the family they are raising replicate the family in which they were raised. Agati notes common examples, such as a firstborn parent getting into raging battles with a firstborn child. Both are used to getting the last word. Each has to be right. But the parent has to be the grown-up and step out of that battle, he advises. When youngest children become parents, Agati cautions that because they may not have had high expectations placed on them, they in turn may not see their kids for their abilities. But he also notes that since youngest children tend to be more social, youngest parents can be helpful to their firstborn, who may have a harder time with social situations.
Language death is not mainstream theater. It is not mainstream anything. Can you imagine Hollywood taking it on? It is so far outside the mindsets of most people that they have difficulty appreciating what the crisis is all about, because they are not used to thinking more about language as an issue in itself. Somehow we need to change these mindsets. We need to get people thinking about language more explicitly, more intimately, more enthusiastically. Interest in language is certainly there. In the general population, most people are fascinated by such topics as where words come from, or what the origin of their town's name is, or whether their baby's name means anything. They are certainly prepared to play Scrabble and a host of other language games ad infinitum, and language games are often found on radio and television, too, but a willingness to focus that interest on general issues. This is Hans Krebs, who in 1937 published a paper showing the sequence of chemical reactions by which energy is released in individual cells. It is called the Krebs cycle, which some of you may remember from your chemistry course in your high school. Krebs is a wonderful example, to me, of how a scientist who is determined can overcome all kinds of human obstacles. Krebs's father constantly discouraged him and told him that he had just mediocre intelligence and would never do anything important in his life, as a teenager. What Krebs remembers in his memoir, his father said to him, "You can't make a silk purse at a sow's ear." Not the same quote, but that he had only mediocre ability and would never be a great scientist.
Sea creatures are inspiring the latest devices that harness wave power. This one, called the oyster, sits on the seafloor and opens and closes as waves pass over it. Cables attach it to generators on the shore. Since the November 2009, it's been powering 9,000 homes in the Orkney Islands. Another device looks like a snake. The anaconda is made from a rubber tube filled with water that floats just below the surface. When the swell hits the front of it, the tube squeezed above ripples down its links and powers a turbine in its tail. Prototypes are currently being tested, but the full-scale version will be 200 meters long. This system also looks like a snake. But this one is made of steel. It floats near the surface, where waves make its joints move. This drives hydraulic systems that power electrical generators, like the anaconda.
In 2005, Japan had the highest median age of all countries in the world, while Australia's population was only moderately aged. Some 50 years ago, the demographic situation was quite different, with the median age of Australia's population being 7 years older than Japan's. The aging of the population is a major issue for Australian policymakers, particularly in regard to the long-term implications for reduced economic growth and the increasing demand for age pensions and health and aged care services. As the population ages, growth in the number of people of working age will slow, while the proportion of people of retirement age will increase. With an abundance of low-priced labor relative to the United States, it is no surprise that China, India, and other developing countries specialize in the production of labor-intensive products. For similar reasons, the United States will specialize in the production of goods that are human and physical capital-intensive because of the relative abundance of a highly educated labor force and technically sophisticated equipment in the United States. This division of global production should yield higher global output of both types of goods than would be the case if each country attempted to produce both of these goods itself. For example, the United States would produce more expensive labor-intensive goods because of its more expensive labor, and the developing countries would produce more expensive human and physical capital-intensive goods because of their relative scarcity of these inputs.
For example, the United States would produce more expensive labor-intensive goods because of its more expensive labor, and the developing countries would produce more expensive human and physical capital-intensive goods because of their relative scarcity of these inputs. This logic implies that the United States is unlikely to be a significant global competitor in the production green technologies that are not relatively intensive in human and physical capital. Nevertheless, during the early stages of the development of a new technology, the United States has a comparative advantage in the production of the products enabled by this innovation. However, once these technologies become well understood and production processes are designed that can make use of less skilled labor, production will migrate to countries with less expensive labor.
This trend is the result of 5 factors, all of them connected with globalization, the growth in international migration, the revolution in transport and communications technology, which is quickening the pace of diasporans' interactions with their homelands, a reaction against global homogenized culture, which is leading people to rethink their identities, the end of the Cold War, which increased the salience of ethnicity and nationalism, and created new space in which diasporas can operate, and policy changes by national governments on issues such as dual citizenship and multiculturalism, which are enabling people to lead transnational lives. Diasporas such as those attaching to China, India, Russia and Mexico are already big, but they will continue to grow. The migration flows which feed them are likely to widen and quicken in the future.
Students at the University of Leicester have recently whizzed up a storm of eco-friendly smoothies. This comes as part of a week of events aimed at promoting environmental initiatives on campus. A range of events and activities were organized by the university environment team and the Students' Union to encourage students to waste less, recycle more, travel sustainably and save energy to contribute to the university's target of cutting its carbon footprint by 60% by the year 2020. The highlight of the week was a cycle-powered smoothie maker. Students rescued fruit from Leicester Market which would otherwise have been thrown away and salvaged it to create delicious smoothies. No electricity was used as the fruit was whizzed up in a blender attached to the back of a bike pedaled by enthusiastic student volunteers.
Today I want to talk about water and the law that surrounds drinking water, to talk about its quality, talk about what your rights are to clean water, to also give you a sense of what key threats are to drinking water, what your exposure might be, and what we might to do about it, both legally but also personally. Water is a critical component of our environment and our bodies. Your body is close to 70% water. You can go for several weeks, 2 or 3 on average without food. You can only go for about 4 minutes without air. And you can go for maybe 4 or 5 days without water before you die. So water is absolutely critical. And one of the key arguments I want to make today is that it's a largely neglected area of environmental law given the rapid increase in our knowledge about chemical threats to water quality and where those threats come from.